Welcome in, everybody, to the It's Official podcast. Jeremy Plonk, Jeff Siegel. Each Tuesday, we recap the doings in racing over the past weekend. And Jeff, final jewel of the 2023 Triple Crown, the Belmont Stakes, is in our rearview mirror now. So obviously, that's going to be high in our priorities.
Yeah, I mean, we've now gone halfway through the season, and there is no definitive leader, but we've got good storylines, don't you think? A great storyline.
Oh, yeah.
You and I are publicists at heart, maybe,
Yeah.
and always looking for the story. And what a great one we have with our Arcangelo winning and Zenyatta winning, and that was fun. But we still have a lot to look forward to, and sometimes when you get a Triple Crown winner, and we've had a couple in the last 7-8 years. The championship is already decided. There's nothing that's going to happen. But now we're starting from scratch almost, which is kind of fun because you're going to have these races really mean something. And I'm looking forward to the second half with many of these 3-year-olds having a legitimate chance to rise to the top. So it's fun.
And a salute to Jenna Antonucci, as you mentioned, the first female trainer ever to win a Triple Crown race. Of course, it comes, I believe, on the 30-year anniversary of Julie Crone winning with Colonial Fair in the Belmont Stakes to become the first female jockey to win one. So it's good for history. It's good for momentum. Look, we had some tough goes after the Belmont Stakes. A couple of horses went down at Belmont Park right after the Belmont and the next day. Those kind of stories get back in the headlines. So you can't flush those from the headlines, nor should we try to flush them from the headlines. But some good news sprinkled in amongst all of the difficult times that we've had over the past couple Triple Crown seasons is certainly welcome. And of course, the breath of fresh air we had with Jenna Antonucci and Arcangelo winning the Belmont Stakes will definitely qualify as good fresh air. Let's go to our topics on the big board this week. It's the Belmont Stakes recap. What did we learn from the action on the racetrack at Belmont Park? Let's go back to the replay. Tom Durkin, something old, something new on the call from Fox.
They are still chasing National Treasure. Arcangelo there toward the inside. Tappan Trice is revving up on the far outside. Angel of Empire and Hitchell and Forte has dropped 6 lengths off the lead. There's 3 furlongs to go. Arcangelo comes through on the inside of National Treasure as the field turns for home here. Tappan Trice on the outside. Angel of Empire is fully extended. Hitchell comes off the inside. National Treasure is determined on the outside. Arcangelo is fiercely determined. Arcangelo coming to the 8th ball. Trying to pull it off. He's in front by 3. He has Jennison National Treasure. Then it's Hitchell. Forte's coming right. Oh, he's got a chance. Forte coming out the outside. He couldn't do it. Arcangelo has won it. Getting ready to turn for home. Who have won the 155th Belmont Stakes.
Certainly a historic achievement there for trainer Antonucci. And Jeff, good handicapping on your part. I know you were part of the Arcangelo bandwagon in terms of handicapping and doped out this winner at 7-1. Give us a little red board, if you will. Why did you like Arcangelo in this spot, and did it play out on the track as you had hoped?
Not only did it play out, but I remembered the way Coastal had won his Belmont when he beat Spectacular Bid, and he got the exact same trip. He sat behind, he got through inside, he took the lead, and then held sway. So I kind of thought that he would be forwardly placed because I didn't think they were going to go that fast. I know we talked about maybe there would be 2 speeds in there that would make National Treasure go faster than he wanted to go. And 47 and 3 and 112 and 2, they're not going to go that much faster in a Belmont, really. So the pace was normal. But I just felt he was improving, and I had pointed out the fact that every race that he had run, he had improved his buyer number by double digits, and he didn't quite improve it by that much, but he went all the way up into the triple digits, which is indicating to me that he continues to improve. And I have a soft spot in my heart for Arrogate and not of by Tappan. So I just thought he would run well. I wasn't totally convinced he would win, but I thought that, he was a fresh horse and he'd had the win over the track, which I thought was good.
Yeah.
The others had question marks. So it all worked out. Genius for a day, but that lasts for about 24 hours. You're back to normal again. Trying to scrape out a 560 winner somewhere. But but I was glad to see him win because the storyline was good, and it's good. Yeah, I always like to see the little guy win, and this horse was a $35,000 yearling. It didn't cost $1.7 million with 14 billionaire owners teaming up. So it all kind of worked out, Jeremy, and that's why it's part of it is the gambling for sure. Part of it is the sport, and I think that's what made this race special for me anyway. But that race is over, and now he's got to do it again if he wants to be a champion. And I'm sure that everybody who's in this group now thinks hey, it's not over. I can still win this thing. And so we're going to see some great racing in the second half of the year for 3-year-olds.
Yeah, we'll talk about that and another topic where the division stands in just a moment. But let's talk a little bit more Belmont Stakes. That skimming rail up the rail ride there, that might have been the difference because this was a field that really labored coming home. Visually, you could see it. They were up and down, up and down. There was not a lot of positive leg action down the lane amongst this group. Final quarter mile in 26:55. And you say, well, it's a mile and a half. They're supposed to get tired, but last year, that was 25:22. Essential Quality went 24:73 2 years ago. Even Sir Winston, when he won this race, went 25:58. Sir Winston was no great shakes, and he was also coming out of the Peter Pan on the stretch out. 25:58 for Sir Winston, the final quarter of the Belmont. This was 26:55, a full second slower than Sir Winston. Jeff, they did not come home fast, and saving that little bit of ground makes a big difference when they're all tired.
There's two ways to look at that. Number one, you're right. He got through every step of the way. He saved all the ground. I was hoping that he was going to be able to squeeze through. I felt there was a chance that National Treasure at that stage of the race was going to start to get a little tired, and he kind of drifted off, and he got through. But on the other hand, when you're down in the inside like that, and you see you have to commit yourself to go into that hole maybe a quarter of a mile earlier than you'd like to go. And that position, but they hit the half mile pole into the 3/8 pole. He had to be ridden a little bit just because they were going to shut him off. So for him to maintain and sustain a long run like he did, to me, was impressive as opposed to a horse like Forte, who was on the outside and really had an opportunity to kind of just sit out there. And although he was losing ground, move when he wanted to move, which is what he did. So I don't know. And I don't think the Belmont main track was all that glib. I've seen it faster. Let's put it that way.
Right.
So when you go a mile and a half and you're carrying 126 pounds and you're a 3-year-old who doesn't have the foundation that some of the older horses do, I'm not going to be too critical of it. Now, they ran the Brooklyn earlier the day, and it was a much slower race, but then the pace was much slower. So we can't really compare them. But I think the boys gave them a triple digit, so I think it was okay. They did get tired, no question about it. But the good news for all these horses is they never have to run that distance anymore. That's it. Back up.
Put that one in the rearview mirror for
sure.
Exactly. Yeah, well, the other thing, too, is we're going to watch some replays a little bit later on the show about some of the other undercard races that we saw here in the Breeders' Cup divisions. And so many of those replays you're going to see on the main track where there's a horse who's fairly well back on the inside with the lead, and they get swallowed up by the horses outside. So it was not a conveyor belt to the inside. There was no great advantage to being inside for Arcangelo in this particular, other than the ground loss, right?
Definitely.
I mean, it wasn't a track that was like soup to the inside, or else we would have seen some different results probably earlier in the card. Let's talk Forte quickly here. This is a horse who, the favorite for the Kentucky Derby, had to scratch with the foot problem. Vet's list kept him out of the Preakness Stakes. To the Belmont, he comes off 2 months and 10 days or so as the layoff, 2 months and 9 days, I believe it was. He ran okay. I mean, he kind of came again at the end, but he kind of lost contact at the head of the stretch, and Tom Durkin kind of called it at that point. He was like making a move, then he just like lost it, and then kind of came again. I think the come again part, or the other horse, is just getting more tired, and Forte has that ability to just kind of keep grinding. To his credit, off the layoff, he ran a good race. It was a good representative race. He was posed with a very tough task.
No question. He actually gained a lot of respect for him, quite frankly, because he looked like he was off the bridle and dropping out of it and fading away. I'm watching that race, and he's my horse. My first reaction is, well, he's not going to hit the board. Yeah. But he did the same thing in the Florida Derby. Now, he was able to win that race. Kind of lose contact when Mage went by him like he was standing still, and then he rallied. So Yeah. The reason why I mentioned I have a respect for him is I don't think he's right. I mean, Fletcher can say it, but I mean, if you go back and watch some of the videos of him, not only this year, his first race, but even last year in the Breeders' Cup, there was acceleration in those races that I'm just not seeing anymore. And I think he's staying on because he's got a lot of quality, a lot of class, but he doesn't seem to be able to blast home. And I'm not saying he has to come home in 24 or anything like that, but he's making hard work of it, and he's running well just because he's a good horse. Yeah. And if he can ever regain the health and soundness, foot problems usually don't go away. They're hard to shake sometimes. And I don't know if he ever will. But, I mean, Forte is – I'm going to give him full credit to run second because he did it on guts alone, I think.
Let's take one more horse here for the review. Tappet Trice. This looked like a Belmont horse all year. This was supposed to be kind of his game, right? He ran just well enough in the Derby, kind of had that Mo Donegal look, who then moved forward for Pletcher off the middling range effort in the Derby and won the Belmont Stakes. Have we seen the best of Tappet Trice in winning against Verifying in the Bluegrass? Is that the best we're going to see of him?
I think the scouting report on Tappet Trice is out. If you were a home run hitter who can't hit a curveball, I think people know that now, because
Kyle Schwarber hitting 177, but hits 50 home runs.
Right. You can get Tappet Trice out because he was exactly where he needed to be. Not only in the Derby when they went really fast, the first part, and he angled wide, had nobody in front of him, but he made no up ground. But if you watch this race, I was looking for him at the, 3/8 pole and 2.5, and he was right where he wanted to be. And the first thing that came to my mind is, okay, I've ragged on this horse for a while, but he's where he needs to be. And if he can't sweep on by, then my theory about him is correct, and that is that he's a one-pace grinder. He can't accelerate. Right. And when you're running in Belmont, these kinds of races, you're running against horses who can quicken. That's part of their strength. And when he got to the leaders and then backed out of it and just lost his punch, I'm thinking, that's the Tappet Trice that I think I know. It's not that he's a bad horse or anything like that. He's a good horse, but he's never going to be able to beat, in my opinion, a really good horse because he doesn't have that part of his weaponry, his arsenal that you need to have to beat good horses.
Right. And one more thing to take away from this year's Belmont Stakes. Javier Castellano ain't done yet. He won the Derby with Mage. He comes back and wins the Belmont Stakes. And today, he was the show and tell. He was the show for his son's 5th grade class. How about bring your dad to school day after winning the Belmont Stakes? He was in full silks and regalia. I bet.
Wow.
I bet the 5th graders like that in New York, huh?
Well, if that ever happened to me when I was in 5th grade, I would have started chewing him out for the bad ride he had the previous Thursday. That would have been me. But that's, like I say, that's me.
If Angel Cordero would have been visiting schools back in the day, he might have got chewed out on the way up by some. Let's go to our second topic this week as we pivot from the Belmont Stakes to the 3-year-old picture in general. We are halfway through the year, and we want to know who's on top. So Jeff posed the question to me, who are your top 5 horses right now? The top 3-year-olds as we've gotten through the Triple Crown. He gave me his list as well. Here's how we sorted it out. There's some agreement, some disagreement. At the top, we've got 2 different runners, but they're familiar with one another. The 1-2 finishers in the Kentucky Derby, Mage and Two Fills. I've got them ranked Mage, Forte, Archangelo, Two Fills, Angel of Empire. Jeff, go through your list.
Well, I understand Mage. I have no quarrel with that. I flipped him even though Mage won the Derby. But Two Fills ran really well, and he doesn't have a subsequent loss. So that's why I thought he got the top billing. And I like what they're doing with him. I think they're going to give him an easy run now. They think it's going to be easy in the Ohio Derby, and then they'll go back against the big boys. But the reason why I went with Two Fills is because he's run well on the lead, which I don't think he necessarily has to be on the front end or close to it like he was in the Derby. But he also won on the all-weather from off the pace. So I think he's a good horse, and I'm really curious to see if he can verify his last 2 highly impressive performances. I'm fairly confident that Mage is going to bounce back, but I have him 4th because I'm kind of looking at the present right now. That's what do they call what do they call it? Bias?
Recency bias.
Recency bias, yeah. So So Arcangelo, I have number 2 because he's got that Triple Crown race in his resume, and I know that. I mean, the way he ran, I was happy that he could go a mile and a half, but I think at a mile and 1/8, mile and a quarter, he's going to be really tough. Forte, just because what I said, I think there's better for him to give if he can just get over whatever issues he has, and we will find out about that, Jeremy, by the way he trains. We've watched him train. I don't know whether Todd's really put the hammer to him yet, but if he trains like the old Forte, we'll know about it, and we'll find out about that at Saratoga, where XBTV will have good workout coverage there. So we'll be there. I also threw an Arabian Lion in there because I know that he's actually going to run now in the. I think the plan is to run in the Haskell, but is as impressive as he was winning the Woody Stevens. Let's not forget that his performance at Pimlico in the undercard over a distance of ground was as visually impressive as you can be. Numbers-wise, he earned a 109 Beyer number, fastest number for any 3-year-old this year. And, I kind of threw him to the side after a couple of disappointing runs. I'm not even so sure Bob Baffert didn't either, But since then, man, he's been good. He's been really, really good. His last 2 races are fine. And he's going to get a chance now with the last 2 stakes wins to win a big grade 1 in the Haskell, if that's where he goes, which I think he will. And then maybe he goes, perhaps, I don't know if he's a mile and a quarter horse, maybe by that time he will be, but maybe there's a Travers in his future. So then he has a chance to state his case.
And as we get to the second half, we had a couple horses for Steve Asmussen throw their name back in the hat last week. Disarm won the Matt Win, beating Verifying at Ellis Park. And Extra Anejo was back with a very nice win. He was one of the most impressive 2-year-olds of all last year at Keeneland. He got back on the beam with a very nice win in Ellis Park Allowance Company. So they're headed for stakes races. Right. Disarm seems to be a horse maybe for the Jim Dandy Travers path. And to me, Extra Anejo seems like a Haskell horse. That's where you try to get a little more distance out of a horse. At Monmouth, the track will be super fast. It's a 1 1/8. So I would not be surprised if we see Extra Anejo in something like the Haskell and they take a shot there. Disarm is a very solid 3-year-old. He's had a good run, good win for him to get back with the win in the Matt Win Stakes. So I would imagine Disarm is going to aim towards the Travers and see how they want to get there. But another player for that second half of the year. Now, what's Brad Cox going to do the second half of the year? I did have one of his horses in my top 5. I kept Angel of Empire in at number 5. I loved his Arkansas Derby win. I've talked about that a million times. So to me, that was the best 3-year-old prep race in America leading up to the Kentucky Derby, the most impressive performance. He ran 3rd in Louisville. It was a good effort. He dead heated for 4th in the Belmont. So he's got some credentials, but maybe the shine's coming off the rose a little bit for him. Maybe he's not the horse who's going to continue to progress throughout the course of the summer and fall, but we shall see. But look at this list that we had on It's Official back in January. This was in January. This is what Brad Cox was playing as far as a hand goes. What do we got on here? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 horses that we thought were potential players towards the Triple Crown. Angel of Empire got there. Hit Show got there. And that's about it. Tappet Shoes got to the Belmont Stakes, didn't do a whole lot with that effort this past weekend. We did see Verifying again back in the action in the Matt Win Stakes, running 2nd. Jeff, there's not a lot of success out of this group of 14 for Brad Cox, and he's the champion trainer in the U.S. the last 2 years running. So Cox doesn't get there with 14 of them in any of the Triple Crown exactas. Yet the Derby is won by Gustavo Delgado with a horse of a lifetime, and the Belmont's won with a horse of a lifetime for Jenna Antonucci. The takeaway there, I guess you can never have too many prospects, and a good horse can come from anywhere.
Same thing happened with Rich Strike last year. I mean, where were the big boys in Kentucky? Loggins, however, may have been the best of that lot, but he was injured and retired. They actually retired.
Yeah, retired to stud now.
Right. So, it's, I don't care how strong you are the first of the year. Things change so dramatically. Yeah. Horses go by the wayside. Horses don't develop like you think. Horses become known. You find out that they're sprinters or milers. They're not 1 1/4 horses. There's some nice horses on that list that are okay. They're just not classic type horses. So, it's once again where here's another situation where if you got a horse in a classic race like the Belmont or the Preakness or the Derby, I mean, you got to think. I've seen too many crazy results from low profile people to win. No one's going to be told that you can't win anymore. If you can make it, you're in the race. You can't win it if you're not in it. So, but again, it makes for good storylines and then good sport. That's what we're looking for.
And we did not get through unscathed in terms of the big barns and the power barns. Of course, Bob Baffert won the Preakness Stakes, of course, with National Treasure. Neither one of us putting National Treasure in our. I think we're in agreement there that was a situational victory, and he was exposed a bit there in the Belmont Stakes with just even token pressure from Tappet Shoes. So, National Treasure, a nice horse, but I don't think he's going to contend for year-end honors by the time we get to the end of the season. Who will be in the year-end honors? Well, horses who run well in the Breeders' Cup, and we are tracking those runners now between now and November's big one out at Santa Anita. And on Belmont Stakes Day, you didn't have to go very far to put the Breeders' Cup tracker GPS on. I mean, the undercard was loaded, stakes after stakes. Let's start with the Met Mile, where Cody's Wish did it again.
Top of the stretch in the Met Mile. Here comes Cody's Wish on the outside. Now to grab the lead. Slow down, Andy. Down towards the rail. It is Cody's Wish in front. Cody's Wish is drawing away. Cody's Wish putting in a huge effort here. Then it's Zandon and White Barrio. But it's Cody's Wish. And this beautiful racing story continues with this terrific racehorse. He has now won 6 in a row. Cody's Wish.
So he's number 1 in the NTRA poll going into the week as the national top-ranked horse. I'm sure he's going to be number 1 again this week for what that's worth. But we know what he's worth on the track. Those winning streak is no joke. He won going around 2 turns in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile last year at Keeneland. His 1-turn races look awfully good. It's about stretch-out time now for Cody's Wish, right? If you want to be the elite, you're going to have to play in something like the Whitney.
As you suggested that he should, a few of our shows back, a couple of months back, we were saying, well, don't you think they should stretch him out? And we talked about Saratoga maybe being the right spot for him. And the thing about that last race we saw, you think of Cody's Wish as kind of a closing type of horse, an off the pace type of horse. I wouldn't say he's Silky Sullivan or anything like that. He rallies from 8th. But the thing about that race that I don't think a lot of people appreciate is that he went from 8th to 1st in one call on the chart. And I mean, he was by those horses before they straightened for home.
Yeah.
And he's got that tremendous, again, turn of foot. And I think maybe, the jock was going to try to circle the field and make sure that he didn't get packed wide. And I think maybe Cody's Wish gave him more than he was kind of expecting, quite frankly.
Right.
Alvarado saying, well, wait a minute, I'm in front. I haven't gotten to the stretch yet. So I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that, and because he's already been 2 turns, he did that in the Breeders' Cup, that he will, carry on. I'm not sure the older handicap division is that great right now. So I would love for Cody's Wish to continue progressing and win the next one and maybe win the one next week. What an exciting horse he would be. The Breeders' Cup Classic to have in there. First time out at that distance. And I'm not putting it past him. I mean, the way he's running, by being by Curlin, I add a dance card. I just tell you, I know we talk about him because of the storyline and all that, but he's underappreciated. He's a terrific racehorse,
Yeah, that's the thing is like he's almost a fictional tale, right? Because of the story with Cody Dorman and the whole family and all of that. But behind it is Godolphin, Bill Mott, Hall of Famer, and a tremendous racehorse, right? This horse is blue-blooded through and through, but he's got that feel-good other side of the tracks kind of story with the connection. And so it kind of makes for the perfect storm because the horse huggers love him and the true racing enthusiasts love him as well for what he does on the racetrack. He's a really good one. And I suspect he'll be fine going longer. Now, Mile and a Quarter is a lot longer. And, the Dirt Mile, the classic move, who was the Pletcher horse? I'm drawing a blank on it. Ran second to Flightline last year. Made the exact same move. Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, brilliantly fast. Stretch out the 1.25 miles and didn't embarrass himself. Flightline was just much, much better, but it can be done, and we'll see. There are no flight lines out there in the Classic division in 2023. So if you're going to get bold, then you want to jump in and try something more lucrative and longer in distance. It's not a bad year to do it. We talked before the Met Mile about how in our handicapping show the 4-year-olds had won that race. The brilliant 4-year-olds, a lot of them Triple Crown alumni types, had won the Met Mile 11 years in a row. So I took a shot with Zandon and I took a shot with White Barrio. They ran 2-3. They ran their race. The problem is Cody's Wish could give two craps about the statistics. I mean, he just obliterated them. But the 4-year-olds showed out pretty well.
Well, for 50 cents, you got 1850 for the try. So
yeah, I didn't play any 1850.
Yeah,
try.
but
you know me well enough that I'm not playing a try that pays 1850.
I understand, but when you got a 3 to 5 shot on top, you would have hoped that with those two horses, including a 20 to 1 shot in the try, that you'd have gotten more. But I guess people took your advice and hammered it. That's the first thing I saw. I said, who's second and third? And Zandon ran well, and White Barrio, we talked about his ability to run around one turn so well that it wasn't. It was fairly predictable. But I'm certainly happy to see Cody's Wish. And we talked about why Cody's Wish doesn't run against another horse in the barn, Elite Power, who, quite frankly, probably would have won the Met Mile if he'd been given the chance. There's no real reason to square him off at this stage, but another son of Curlin and his True North Stakes win was what we expected, I guess.
Let's take a look back at that one. The True North won by Elite Power on Belmont Saturday.
And now they're moving for the quarter pole, and it is Strobe who's right alongside of today's flavor as Elite Power now gets in gear on the outside. Anarchist is in fourth, and here comes Elite Power, and he powers to the front now. Elite Power in front past the furlong marker. It's Elite Power by 3 lengths. Anarchist now moving into second. It is Elite Power, and the winning streak is at 7 as he takes the Grade 2 True North Stakes. Elite Power, a champion sprinter.
That's the way you like to see one level off. Once he made the lead, the head was down, the stride was out there. It was name your margin from that point forward. Elite Power, really good right now. Belmont is in the seat. He's got the 2 fastest horses, the fastest sprinter in Elite Power, the fastest miler in Cody's Wish. Who knows where they all end up? I would think Elite Power back to the Breeders' Cup Sprint. There's really no reason to do anything different with him. And then he's got Cody's Wish to figure Dirt Mile, or we stretch out towards the Classics. So Mott is sitting good, and Elite Power, he just looks as good as ever.
I would be tempted to try him in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile because he already, he won the sprint. Let's try to branch out. But the plan for now, anyway, is to take him to Saratoga and keep him around one turn. And I think that's the right thing to do. You run him in the Forego and the Vanderbilt, I think it is. And then after that, you really don't have to run him around 2 turns. You can go, to Aqueduct or whatever they're going to be going after Saratoga. And right. But he's a terrific horse. Somehow, some way, I'm looking at the form. He managed to get beat in his first 3 races. How do you do that? I mean, but since then you can't touch him. He's won 7 in a row. And every race seems like he has gotten bigger and better and faster and more authoritative. Again, a horse that likes to lay off the pace and make a run. And he was off the pace at the top of the stretch, and he went from off the pace in front in the matter of a 16th of a mile. So that great turn of foot that he has, utilizing it as a sprinter. But here's another horse that I hope he gets a chance to go long. I mean, there aren't too many Curlins who aren't better 2-turning than they are 1-turning. It's certainly possible that this one is, but man, he's only 4. So no, I'm sorry, he is 5. So I don't know how much more racing he's going to have. Might as well give him a shot to do it. I mean, it's not going to hurt his reputation if he gets beat going long.
Yeah, you got the Awesome Again out at Santa Anita, the host track for the Breeders' Cup. It's a 1.125 but a pretty achievable 1.125 out there, and a track that's generally friendly to fast horses and speed. Yeah. So that may be a good testing ground. You try that, and if it doesn't work out, you're back to the Dirt Mile. If something works out well for you, who knows what you might be taking a shot at, even to the Classic. Let's go to the turf now at Belmont, where the filly and mare turf or mile division has its favorite right now in the U.S., perhaps in Italian. She was lone speed in this race, and Spenderella had the misfortune of having to do all the dirty work chasing her, and nobody could chase either one of those two down. In Italian was very impressive in winning the Just a Game.
The field is at the top of the stretch. In Italian, challenged here by Spenderella. In Italian, now being asked for more, and she responds here. In Italian, quickly opens up by 3.5 lengths. Spenderella in second. Then Speak of the Devil, Wakanaka on the far outside, and New Year's Eve. in Italian, in any language. A dominating performance here in the Grade 1 Just the Game. She completed the mile over the firm turf in 1 minute, 34 seconds.
Imbattibile, as we said in our preview show, unbeatable in Italian. She was on the front end, the way she drew off. How about Spinderella? You're supposed to run last. When you chase a horse like that all the way around and there's good runners behind you, a bunch of Chad Browns and Bill Motts, Spinderella's supposed to throw the anchor out at some point and get, just like totally turned off after trying to chase an Italian. She held on and ran a good second. This was a good race. I mean, it was predictable on paper. It was a carousel, but you look at the result of this and I feel pretty good about it.
If you watch that race again, if you get a chance to watch the race again, watch it, but blot out in Italian. Just don't feel like she's not in the race. And then you'll really get to appreciate how well Spinderella ran, because she had 3 or 4 horses chasing her, and they were never going to catch her, no matter how far they ran. No one can beat Italian when you hand her the lead. I mean, Italian went 47-4, and then 46-1. I mean, you got to catch a horse like that, for the mile. The question now is, it's almost like, what do you do with her now? I mean, she's going to run into Diana, I'm sure, at Saratoga, but man, I wish there was something better she could do now. I mean, it's like the bum of the month club that Joe Lewis had, I think it was. I mean, we know you can beat these horses. Step out and go a little farther. Or now, in terms of the Breeders' Cup, I don't think she's going to run in the Freely Mare Turf because that's 1.25 miles. But she certainly can run against the boys going a mile. So I think that, at this stage of the game, she's 5 years old. I think the main thing, though, is, you want her to win as many as you can, win as much purse money as you can, pile up as much Grade 1s as you can. And if the competition isn't up to it, that's their problem, not yours, right?
Right. Exactly. I think, you probably the First Lady at Keeneland would be a potential race in the fall, during the fall, if they want to get closer to the Breeders' Cup, or they just finish up at Saratoga and then lay up until Breeders' Cup time before traveling out west. With the additional travel, maybe they'll want some more time in between races. So you may see her at Saratoga, and that's about it for in Italian before the Breeders' Cup and probably the mile. They do say the 1.25 miles at Santa Anita, Jeff, starts on the downhill course, and if you're going to get a little extra distance, it's not as demanding as a true 1.25 miles and all the flat. Do you buy into that? That's
true. That's true. But I think what you'd have to do is look at the entrance and see, is there anybody going to make me go 45 and change? If there is, I don't care how many of these classic European horses are that lay back and blast home, but if ain't nobody going to run with her, I don't care how far they run. So I think that's an option that they will examine and it may present itself with a great opportunity to win that race. If there isn't anybody who can run with her early. And I don't think anybody's going to try, right? No one's getting in front of her. So it's something that obviously Chad Brown's going to monitor, and then he doesn't have to make that choice right now.
Yeah, and let's be honest, right? It depends who else is in your stable and where they want to go. If he's got good horses to fill the mile, maybe he stretches out. If he's got the Filly and Mare Turf loaded up with other horses, maybe he wants to go and try to divide and conquer by sending in Italian to the mile. They've got options because they've got one of the best fillies and mares on the turf in America right now. No question who the best male horse on the turf right now is. Chez Pierre got beat earlier on the card at Belmont Park on Saturday, leaving Up to the Mark, a horse he dispatched at Keeneland with a chance to step forward, and boy, did he ever.
And here's Up to the Mark. Set down for the drive into the final furlong. Strong quality. Up to the Mark is roused to the lead. Soldier Rising coming late. And so too Red Knight on the outside. And they're coming down to the finish. And it will be Up to the Mark. Up to the Mark gets onto the line and wins it by 3 lengths. Soldier Rising got second. Ottoman Fleet was third. And Red Knight was fourth in 1:59.1.
So when we talked about Chez Pierre beating Up to the Mark, that was at a mile at Keeneland, okay? Chez Pierre, definitely a miler. Up to the Mark, better going longer, as we see after this 1.25 miles. This was a fantastic performance. Now it becomes, can he go the 1.5 miles, and can he do it against Europe's best? But he's a good-looking prospect here in the States.
I would say this is the first horse in my mind that comes to mind that as an American-based horse in the last few years that I can honestly say I don't really care who the Euros bring over. Now, you mentioned the 1.5 miles, but it is downhill. I mean, all he has to do is switch off and come down that hillside course and just get some cover, and there should be no problem with him being able to reproduce that incredibly fast, brilliant turn of foot that he showed in this race. And I think as a colt who, if you look at his race record and you draw on through all the dirt races, and just look at his grass races, he's, other than that race against Shea Pierre, who again, maybe Shea Pierre ran out of his mind that day, but other than that, up to the mark, to me, looks like he is head and shoulders against any North American-based grass horses here. I think the only thing that you'd have to worry about is soft ground. You're not going to get that at Santa Anita, but you can back in New York. But other than that, and trying to keep him in the same form that he is right now. But he is spectacular, and I would think that this version of Up to the Mark could have won last year's Breeders' Cup turf if he had been in that situation. So we'll see how it turns out. But he is for real, and he made that look way too easy as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, Up to the Mark, maybe the best American since Bricks and Mortar for Chad Brown 4, 5, 6 years ago, who was, formidable into the Breeders' Cup. That kind of horse, though, I think, comparing the Americans to the Europeans, I think he's in that same kind of conversation with Bricks and Mortar. Let's go to the Acorn Stakes on Saturday. It was the 3-year-old fillies at Belmont Park, and a follow-up to the Kentucky Oaks for Pretty Mischievous. They extended the distance of the Acorn, which traditionally had been a mile around one turn, to still a one-turn race, but a mile and a 16th. And I think that helped the sprinter come back to the Oaks winner, but she didn't need much help. Let's take a look. Pretty Mischievous in victory.
With Money's Gold in front, ran 3/4 in 1:10.4. And now they're at the quarter pole. It is Money's Gold with the lead. Darth Vader has moved to the outside. Pretty Mischievous is in third as the field comes through the stretch, and Pretty Mischievous is kicking in now on the outside. Pretty Mischievous is taking the lead. Darth Vader up into second. Money's Gold is back in third, and then Occult. They're coming down for the finish. It is Pretty Mischievous trying to hold off Darth Vader. They come on for the finish. Pretty Mischievous. She won the Kentucky Oaks, and now she takes the Grade 1 Acorn by a head over Darth Vader.
Not an easy double to pull off. You think of horses like Plum Pretty. You think of Monomoy Girl, some really nice 3-year-old fillies to win the Oaks and then turn back and win the one-turn Acorn. Darth Vader, good effort as the runner-up. This horse just continues to outrun her odds and her expectations. She's one of the great named horses in all of racing, Jeff. I don't know if you heard this one, but the owner, John Ropes, his wife complained that he never named the horse after her. Her name's Dorothy, so he named her Darth Vader. I don't know how you come back home and then sit at the dinner table and say, I just named one after you, Darth Vader.
That is funny. I'll tell you what, though, Pretty Mischievous is, I don't know if she's a great filler or anything like that, but she's relentless. I'll give her that. She knows how to win races. She's now won 6 out of 8. Hard to knock that kind of resume. And she's won 2 very prestigious races in the Kentucky Oaks and now the Acorn. Still a long way to go for her. But right now, it's her and everybody else chasing her. Even though, again, she's not winning these races in dominating fashion, but she's got that willingness, that ability to find the wire. And I don't see anything on the horizon right now. There may be, but right now, nobody's really close to her as far as I'm concerned in terms of the 3-year-old filly division.
There's a lot of races in New York, right? Coaching Club Oaks, Mother Goose. There's a whole slew of those. Alabama. Then you could go to the Cotillion at Parks. And then if you want to take on the older horses, of course, this outfit here, Brendan Walsh, very formidable at Keeneland. You could take on the Elders and the Spinster before you get to the Breeders' Cup. But a lot of options on the table for her. It's going to take something remarkable to knock her out of the 3-year-old championship, I think, at this point, based on, the win she had at Fairgrounds. You had the Kentucky Oaks and the Acorn together, and nobody else has really strung together any kind of majors or any big races. She is going to be very tough to unseat for the champion 3-year-old filly. Let's go to our fourth topic. You talked about Pretty Mischievous has his nose for the wire in the way of finishing things off. Zenyatta did as well, and they're not in the same category, but exciting finishers in the filly and mare ranks. There's not been a more exciting finisher than Zenyatta. Jeff, she was retired from her broodmare career this past week after giving full to a full-on filly, I should say, on Friday, right before the Belmont Stakes. They announced that she would be retired at age 19. Your thoughts on Zenyatta? She gets to live the life of luxury now, I believe, at Lane's End.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even know she was still in production, quite frankly, because she's had some issues. She slipped at several foals, and at age 19, that's kind of like at the end of the road. But she had I think it was a Warfront filly that she has. And if you look at her produce record, which, by the way, isn't all that unusual, if you might think it is. I mean, this is to an extreme, really. But a lot of great mares over the years have had had difficulty not only getting in full, having foals, but then having foals that could actually run. And Cosmic One, I think he took on a new career as a show horse because he couldn't really run. Zakonic was a chestnut little Tapit colt, never grew up. He could run a little bit. He hit the board 8 out of 12, but he never won. Zelda was a very small filly by Medaglia d'Oro who never showed a thing in the morning. They trained her, and I guess they just decided to retire her as unraced. Zilka is a Candy Ride filly. I saw her last year, another when she was 2, and again, not much to her. So it's one thing to reproduce in terms of ability, but one thing that about Zenyatta is she never had a foal that looked anywhere like her. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it was it was small, and it just so at this stage of the game, she's obviously done enough. But I will say one thing: a lot of times when you breed horses like that, they skip a generation. So in other words, Zenyatta might not make it or hasn't made it as a broodmare, but sometimes her daughters will pick up the ball for her. So she's got some fillies that will be in production. So I wouldn't completely write her off as being a total failure. But I mean, very much similar to Genuine Risk, who kept slipping her foal. I think she only had 2 foals. I'm not even sure if either one won. Genuine Risk, of course, the Kentucky Derby winner.
Right.
And Rags to Riches is another one. Remember how great she was, and actually won the Belmont, beat Curlin of all horses. She only had 1 winner, and that winner was at Serbia and Hungary, and such racetracks that the Jockey Club doesn't even recognize them. I mean, other than that, I mean, she just didn't have anything that could run. So, I'm glad to see. By the way, speaking of that, Beholder actually had a stakes winner. Her first one couldn't run, but the second one won a stakes at Santa Anita about a month ago. So that's good that looks like she's going to be okay. But as you pointed out when we were talking about this going in, I mean, it's not that unusual. Winning Colors, for example, Derby, and these are mares that had great pedigrees and just didn't deliver.
Yeah, and they got the best, best sires too, right? I mean, Winning Colors only had 3 winners total. None of them won in stakes races. Lady Secret had 4 winners. 3 of them won maiden races. 1 won an allowance race. Lady Secret, probably, if you're talking like Breeders' Cup era, there are 2-star mares. I mean, there are more than that. They're the Beholders and whatever, but there's 2 in another stratosphere of the Breeders' Cup era. To me, it's Lady Secret and Zenyatta. And again, neither was a producer in the broodmare shed. Zenyatta lives on in our shows. Let's see, which way am I pointing here? Up over the shoulder there. That's her winning the Apple Blossom Stakes with Mike Smith aboard. That always adorns us here. But her signature win, the one that Zenyatta will always be remembered for. I know the loss to Blame in the last one kind of leaves the impression, but Trevor Dedman's call and her performance in the 2009 Breeders' Cup Distaff, or in the Classic, I should say, after winning the Distaff the previous year, she took on the boys in the Classic out at Santa Anita, and this is a great one. Let's go back down memory lane with Zenyatta on the announcement of her retirement.
And let's see, Zenyatta has a lot of ground to make up. Zenyatta, if she wins this, she'll be a super horse. She's starting to pick them off, though. Zenyatta going to hook to the outside. Meanwhile, it's Colonel John Summerbird in the red cap. And Zenyatta's come to the outside. Zenyatta coming flying on the grandstand side. Gio Ponti on the inside. Summerbird is right there. This is unbelievable. Zenyatta, what a performance, one we'll never forget. Looked impossible, but it is Zenyatta, still unbeaten under Mike Smith. Gio Ponti second, Summerbird, and then Richard's Kid.
My favorite parts of that clip I forgot about is our old buddy Mac McBride from
Yeah.
Del Mar there, the part of the notes team with him many years at the Derby with the pump of fist there next to John Sheriff's afterwards. We were all excited for Zenyatta, and I know the West Coast guys were. I mean, she was your home field horse, and she proved it. She just looked different than everybody else in the stretch, Jeff. The size, the length of the neck, everything about her. I mean, she was just built different, and maybe that's why, as a producer, you just can't build them like that.
No, and I walk through, I go to Santa Anita every day to go to work. And where I park and where I enter, there's that big Zenyatta statue that I see every day. So I'll never forget her. I couldn't forget her even if I wanted to, because I had this big statue, the beautiful statue of Zenyatta in the behind the grandstand. But yeah, I mean, she was given every chance to make it, and but again, the owners still have the daughters, and I think that maybe the dream might still live on for a while. But the fact that she wasn't able to, reproduce herself or even get a winner doesn't detract from how great she was. And I don't think in California mostly because she was here, but I had people stop me that sort of maybe knew me, but I didn't know them, and they wanted to do was talk about Zenyatta at the height of her glory, and I was
right.
I mean, even a non-racing fan knew about her, so. I was always happy to chat her up, and at that time, she was the superstar that everybody always wants to see.
I'll never forget the first time I saw her. I was standing at the Gap at Churchill Downs with a walkie-talkie helping spot horses for Derby Week for the camera crews, the veterinarians, things like that. And all of a sudden I turned around. I was like Kramer and Seinfeld, like one of these kind of things like this.
Yeah.
Like the biggest horse I'd ever seen was standing right next to me. I was like, the hell is this monster? And somebody said, that's Zenyatta. And I'm like, holy cow. Now, she was supposed to run in the Louisville Distaff that year, but the track came up sloppy. And the way John Sheriffs was very meticulous with her, he just scratched her. You don't scratch Derby Week out of a big stakes after flying across the country because you don't like the track condition. But they did. And, her record stayed intact. But I'll just never remember turning around and looking at her. And she looked unlike any other horse. I mean, she was a Clydesdale amongst thoroughbreds, almost in stature. She just looked different and was just quite different. So Zenyatta retires after producing her fifth foal. Four have made it to a track at least along some workouts. We will see what this last foal by Warfront. Now we're looking for stars of the future. Maybe that Zenyatta Warfront foal will be in our discussion in a year or two as we come to this segment. But as far as our latest star of tomorrow, it happened at Belmont Park and Stakes Company. We started to get the 2-year-old stakes action this past weekend, and it was Gold Sweep, looking just like the sweep in the Tremont.
Come into the lane now. Here comes Gold Sweep to take a narrow lead. Ship Cadet continues to battle on. Yo-Yo Candy racing a bit erratically there through the stretch, and Gold Sweep has now taken command. It is Gold Sweep in front and pouring it on here at the end, and Gold Sweep will break his maiden, winning the Tremont decisively.
Impressive win there by Gold Sweep. Good way to break the maiden in the second career start. Jeff, your thoughts on this Asmussen trainee?
He got beat somehow at Churchill. I think it was a 5/8 of a mile race, and he was finishing like a freight train. So obviously Steve Asmussen figuring I don't need to run back against maidens. I can run him in this race. $150,000 listed stakes. He won the race by 9, but he was head and head at the top of the stretch. And if you're looking for a 2-year-old, you'd rather have him open up in the lane than open up and kind of hang on,
Right.
And he was doing his best work in the last 50 yards or so. 103-2 looks like a colt who will run on a little bit, if nothing more. He's by Speightstown, and out of a mare named Wonder Brew by Giants Causeway. Wonder Brew herself, I'm not sure she ever won a race, but her mother was terrific. Ginger Brew, remember her?
Mm-hmm.
So there's stamina there, and sometimes we talk about skipping a generation there.
Right.
Maybe Ginger Brew couldn't come up with a runner like this one, but her daughter certainly has, at least apparently.
Yeah.
So we'll see how he goes. I'm sure he'll go to Saratoga and try to win some of those early 2-year-old races, and then down the road we'll see if he trains on and maybe can get a middle distance. He certainly won this race like he could, but he's a star. If he's not a future star, he's a present star. Gold Sweep. Very impressive winner of the Tremont at Belmont last Sunday.
And now these segments, the Stars of Tomorrow, get to be really fun as we get past the Belmont and into summer. We come up with some really good ones that are unveiled this time of year and into Saratoga and Del Mar in another month or so's time into July. Let's recap the 5 topics this week on It's Official, Belmont Stakes. What we learned. We learned that it wasn't just a rail skimming ride that got Arcangelo home, and this is a horse with a big future. Great story with Jenna Antonucci winning, becoming the first female to win a Triple Crown race as a trainer. We're halfway through the season. Who's on top? I still got Mage on top, the Kentucky Derby winner. Jeff going on top with 2 fills, the runner-up in the Kentucky Derby, who's going to be back in action shortly in the Ohio Derby. Our Breeders' Cup tracker took you through 1 million races on the undercard at Belmont Park. An impressive Belmont trainees, Cody's Wish and Elite Power, did it again. They kept their winning streaks intact. We talked about the retirement of the 19-year-old Zenyatta, who had her final foal last Friday. And in our Stars of Tomorrow segment, it was Gold Sweep, winner of the Tremont Stakes. Those 5 topics are now official because Jeff Siegel and I said so. That's what we do each week here on It's Official. We'll be back in another week's time to do it all again. Coming up next will be our Friday handicapping podcast. We'll get back to Fridays for our First Call podcast. We've been doing it a little bit earlier in the week because of the Triple Crown weeks and recent sessions, but we'll be back to our regular Friday schedule. And there's a lot to talk about this coming week in the racing scene. Jeff will be handicapping closing weekend at Santa Anita. Final day of racing for the meet at Santa Anita will be on Sunday, where there's a mandatory payout in the Rainbow Six. There's also going to be a $1 million single ticket payout guarantee on Saturday, the day before. So if you try to sweep the pot, you're guaranteed at least $1 million if you got a single ticket pick 6 winner on Saturday at Santa Anita. And then again, on closing day, it's mandatory payout. All things must go. So a big week of racing coming up. Preview day at Monmouth Park for Haskell. They've got a bunch of stakes races that'll lead you to the Haskell and the Haskell undercard coming up this weekend at Monmouth. Should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it'll be racing never ceases to build on itself. We've got good racing this week, and of course down the road next month. Just trying to catch a breath. I don't know about you, but
yeah.
Santa Anita finishing. Thank you. 6 months straight. It's they all. I mean, and by the way, I've got a handicap for the Express Bet website. I think they told me there were going to be 34 races Friday, Saturday, and Sunday a total.
Load it up.
By the time I get to Sunday, but I'll do my best. Then we have Los Al, which we kind of take a break on, and then Del Mar and Saratoga. We'll dive in for that next month. But in the meantime, we've got very, very good racing to look forward to. In the 3-year-old division, there's always going to be something that will keep us interested every week from here on in. So we'll watch that, and in the meantime, why not build a bankroll?
And they drew today for the Pepsi North America Cup at Woodbine, one of the top harness races of the year. Our Al Samaglia will have handicapping videos for that coming up later in the week. And I would have to think Nikola Jokic is going to check in with a pick at some point for the North America Cup after winning the NBA Finals last night. The big harness fan and owner. Hats off to the Denver Nuggets and anybody fans of them. And of course, harness racing, maybe they'll get a little bit of bump with the attention Jokic is bringing to harness racing. Of course, we'll take everything we can get, whether it was Wayne Gretzky back in the day in thoroughbred racing or Nikola Jokic today. We'll take whatever bumps we can get. Jenna Antonucci's win, Jokic's win, and the tide of racing. It's some positive vibes, at least coming off the last few days.
Let me tell you, if I ever run into Nikola, I don't know how I would, but if I ever did, I would tell him that, you never saw Albatross Pace and Adios Butler and all these great 60s standardbred runners that I got to cover when I was working for Western Harness. And I've been out of that end of the horse racing for a long, long time. But I tell you what, a big race in harness racing is just as exciting as a big race in thoroughbred racing.
That's why we got Al Samaglia. He's going to take care of us for all the harness stuff that you need. First Bet and Express Bet. Be sure to play the North America Cup coming up on Saturday and check out Al's analysis. That'll wrap things up for this edition of It's Official. Jeff and I, again, will be back on Friday with the First Call podcast to get handicapping for the weekend. Good luck, everybody, and hope you enjoyed this year's